Thank you, Dr. Tang. Now I would like to invite Mr. O'Rear to give us the perspective from the private sector. Okay. Well, just in case you get too excited, I usually give you 3 minutes. Not just for you, for the subsequent speakers, you know, if the time is coming up. So, okay.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to see that we are in agreement on most of these points. That's fine, thanks. Policy is a matter of choices, and I think, as Mrs. Hose has shown, the government knows what the choices are. It's just a matter of deciding which ones we're going to take. It makes me very sad to think that we're growing vegetables in warehouses rather than putting people in there. People are living in cages, and we're growing vegetables in warehouses? That's wrong. That's just flat out wrong. Population policy is a very broad subject, and it ties together many different aspects of public policy. I'm going to focus on a couple of them that are related to education and the labor force. On education, the quality and employability of our workforce is one of the most direct functions of the education system. We put $220 billion into education in the last 3 years. That's 18% of all of our public spending. And it's more than we spent on social welfare and housing put together. The investment is not a very good one. We're not getting what we need. And that's a worry. And particularly those who don't go on to university. They're unsuited for the job market here. Think about Lower Manhattan. If you had to have every single job in Lower Manhattan filled by somebody who grew up there, forget it, it's impossible. It's a crazy notion to try and limit your entire working population to those people who are local to that particular part of a small island. So you need to think in terms of not Hong Kong versus Singapore, although that's very useful. And by the way, their population has been soaring, absolutely leaping and growing hugely. And yet they had a failure in their effort to promote Chinese babies. The reason is they imported labor. We have families here that are struggling to make ends meet, yet they will avoid free education and pay good money for ESF or international schools. That's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. A world-class city has to have a high-quality English language-based education system, or at least an alternative for those who wish it. On the training side, we fully support the notion of apprenticeships. We think that there's a very strong benefit for both business and the community at large, and that because there are cross benefits, there should be cross payment, which means that government and business would subsidize apprentice programs. Vocational training and retraining are also necessary for equipping the workers who are already in the workforce. Our economy changes very, very fast, and we've reinvented ourselves over and over and over. And it takes about 15 years. We're just a completely different kind of economy. 15 years ago, we were still about 10 or 15% manufacturing, and now it's just gone. So we're always going to have a skills mismatch, and particularly for those who don't pursue higher education or a very, very highly skilled technical expertise. As it becomes more service-oriented economy, then we need to be more customer-focused, which means you want more mature workers. A teenager in a shop may be fine, but when that shop is selling a $10,000 bag, you want somebody who's a little more mature, a little more polished, a little more able to talk with the customer and make the sale. And by the way, if you don't make the sale by the end of the work week, keep working. Don't put a limit of standard working hours, because working on commission in a retail shop, that would kill your income. Retaining older workers can be facilitated in a number of different ways. I'm not worried about older workers blocking the promotion path of younger workers, because from an employer's perspective, I want a good worker. I don't care if he's young. So if you're not good enough to get promoted, stay put. Maybe you'll get better. I don't worry about young people not having promotion opportunities, and I think the civil service needs to learn about this. The civil service is aging very rapidly, and they're going to be losing their best people when those who joined after 2000 realize that the MPF is not that great, and there's no pension to keep them in the civil service, so then they'll begin to look for opportunities elsewhere. The era of compulsory retirement at 55 or 60 or even 65, that should be long over. In the United States, where I come from, the 65 retirement program was put in place when people died at 63. The average lifespan was 63, and the retirement age was 65. It hasn't changed. And in Hong Kong, people live to 80 or more. So the idea of being forced to retire at 60, but you can't collect your MPF until you're 65, that's weird. That's really, really strange. And particularly, again, I'm sorry, but the civil service, if your employer has the right to say, no, I'm not going to let you work for a couple of years after you leave the job, it's too sensitive. I can't collect my MPF, I can't work, what am I supposed to do? So we should just put away this notion of compulsory retirement. And again, I think government should take the lead on it. There's a lot of incentives that can be used and can be very useful in dealing with some of these issues. Flexible working times, these have all been discussed already. I think I won't repeat them, but I do endorse them. The flexible working time, sharing jobs, and so forth. There are some prohibitive things that need to be considered. For example, older workers, maybe their companies may be charged a prohibitive premium for employee compensation insurance, and that needs to be looked at. If you suddenly, when you hit the age of 60, the insurance premium goes shooting up, your employer may say that's too much, so we should look at that. And then there's licensing for some jobs is limited by age, such as security guards. I don't know why a 60-year-old man can't sit here and look at a monitor and go, oh, that shouldn't be happening. Call some help. There's no 60-year-old limit to that sort of work. We need to encourage a lot more women to get into the labor force. This is a big issue. We have embarrassingly the lowest women's participation rate in the labor force in Greater China, less than 50%. It's primarily among women in the 30 to 50 range, and in fact, in the 20 to 25 age group, there are more women employed as a percentage of the population than there are men. The earlier numbers were about labor force, but actual employment is higher. Then it drops off dramatically, and a big part of that is child care, care for the elderly, and so we need to look at those issues and how we can deal with them. It also, of course, puts a big limit on earnings for your entire lifetime if you take 10 or more years out of your career. The right policies aimed at providing assistance that families need should be a core part of our population policy. Talent shortage, this is not unique. Everybody has a talent shortage around us. We need to think about migrant workers, think about workers who will come here for a few years and move on, and then come back for a few years, bringing us the experience that they gained from somewhere else. We need to think about the barriers to professional people coming to Hong Kong. The most obvious one is doctors. We're perfectly willing to accept drugs that are approved in Japan, Britain, America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, but not the doctors. We'll trust the drugs, but not the doctors. That's strange. We also won't trust that the packaging on the cereal says low sodium, but we'll trust the drugs. It should be the other way around. Elderly care, for example. If we're going to have an aging society and everybody knows it, we need to have somebody take care of these people. And frankly, Hong Kong people don't want to do it, so we hire other people to do it. That's a very important part of reducing the average age of your labor force, is bringing in temporary workers. I'm very discouraged by the government's decision to omit foreign domestic helpers from the calculations. They bring our average age way down and bring our participation rate by women way up. And they are in our society, contributing to our economy year after year. Why not count them? Oh, they also have two other characteristics that are very important. We don't have to train them. They're adults when they get here. And we don't have to take care of them when they retire, because they leave. So these are the best possible employees, are ones that you don't have to pay to train and you don't have to take care of when they retire. You just get their working productivity. If all of these measures we talked about already today were fully implemented, fully embraced, we'd have a good basis for our population and our growth in the coming decades. But we have a much, much more urgent issue, and that's right now. We need to fill about 75 to 80,000 jobs. We have 130,000 unemployed people and about 80,000 job vacancies. Now, 130,000, that's about 3.2%, 3.1% unemployment. If you could fill all of those 80,000 jobs, you'd be below 1% unemployment. That's full employment. We can't fill those jobs. People either won't take them or they don't have the skills necessary. If each one of those jobs were filled, our economy would not have grown 3% last year, it would have grown 5%. And we have to drive the economy faster in order to generate the tax revenue to pay for our elderly and our future needs. So we're choosing, we're making a choice here. Do we want to grow vegetables in warehouses, or do we want to house people in something other than a cage? Do we want to grow the economy fast enough to take care of our elderly in the future, to have the money to do it, or do we want to perhaps not disrupt society by bringing in workers from overseas? We can, of course, build in these requirements that they leave if the unemployment rate goes up. We can do it on a project basis. We built Chapultepec Airport with battalions of imported workers, and when the project was done, they left. We got their labor, they got our money, and we didn't have to take care of them, we didn't have to train them, we didn't have to pay for their retirement. They came, they did a job, and they left. We also had a pretty tight labor market at that time. That was about 20 years ago. And we just didn't have the workers to do it. Importing workers for an employer, importing workers is very expensive. You're going to have to pay transport, you're probably going to have to pay for housing, so you're not going to do it if you can hire someone locally. So there really is no threat to local jobs. And besides, we have full employment. And if the unemployment rate goes up, you can say, well, no more of that imported labor. So it's not going to threaten local jobs. Instead, what happens is you reduce the number of hours that people might have to work. So you don't have to work 50 hours a week because you've got one more person on the team. You might be able to work 40 hours a week. And so it can be a benefit to workers as well. You can make guarantees that they get paid the average wage and so forth. But if we look at the sectors that have shortages, it's all sectors. The worst is in construction, retail, and elderly care, and some of the tourist places like the airport and Disneyland. They're distant. People don't want to go out there to work for a shift. But what we really have is every sector has vacancies that are not being filled, and they're getting worse. So we have a trade-off that we have to make. This is policy. This is politics. Do we want this or do we want that? Do we want vegetables or do we want houses? Do we want to grow fast enough to pay for our elderly care in the future, or do we want to not upset workers who think that that might reduce their wages? Hong Kong is very, very fortunate right now. We have very, very low unemployment, huge budget surpluses, and the rest of the world has the opposite. They have very high unemployment and big debt. So we need to take care of ourselves while we can. And one of the things we need to do is not leave opportunities lying around by refusing to take them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rear from the private sector. So I would like to invite our next speaker, Professor Yip, giving us a perspective from the social work profession.
Thank you for presenting this invitation. Actually, by trade, I'm not a social worker. but I'm trained as a biostatistician, so I really can talk to you as more or less as a researcher. I think the demography or the population policy. Okay, so that is the consultative document, as we said. Professor Sum and I also serve as a non-official members of the steering committee. And actually, I can assure you, I think this working committee is as one of the committee we serve with a lot of pressure. I mean, not pressure. So we do feel that I think the whole committee itself really have a heart. I think try to make a difference and try to really to improve the situation. So without, I'm sure you know that is our population changes, and then that is in the 80s, in the 90s. I think some of you might not have been born yet. You know, I think in the 80s we are somewhat here, and now we are moving along, right? And actually, you can see that is what we look like. So it actually doesn't really look like a population pyramid, right? I think it really looks like something. Because of the low fertility rate, so we have a very narrow base, and also I think we are fortunate to live long enough now. I think 86 for women and 80 for men. So we do have a very going to have a burden, I think, for us to look after. Now that is even worse, right? And that's look like hurricanes, right? So it's not hurricanes, right? I mean, for hurricanes, whenever it goes, it causes a lot of destruction. I think that is what we are dealing with now. I think it is because of that. I think we have to deal with. Now, I think what Mr. O'Neill has mentioned something about this foreign domestic capital. I think these are the ones. Indeed, we are very fortunate. I mean, indeed, we are very fortunate. I think we have this people. I think who help us along. I think throughout these many years. So I think any discrimination on this people, I think they should be penalized. But what I'd like to show you it is the pace and the magnitude of the changes. It occurs in such a short time. And as you know, I mean, the government is a big machine. It's a big thing. If they want to change, they need to change very slowly. And so that's why sometimes we need to be more sympathetic to them. Not because they do not want to respond, but sometimes they just the thing it happens too fast. But as you can see, for any population, what we are dealing with, we have the present PT. That is a population type. That is a birth, and then there's a death, and then there's an in, and then there's an out. Now, what we have been dealing with, I think, for the birth, I think we know that we have a very low fertility rate, about 1.1. I think well below the replacement level, and that's why we have the problem. Now, I think yesterday, I think the Bauhinia Foundation that mentioned about the type 2 babies, right? The type 2 baby is a baby born by the non-Hong Kong parents, and actually there are about 180,000 of them. And these actually, I think, could be one of the possibilities, I think, to help us, I think, to slow down our aging process. Now, if you know how to calculate the TFR, called the total fertility rate, actually, with this 30,000 baby, putting up for the whole total number of births, our TFR will bounce back to about 1.4 only. But it's still well below, I think, in Germany or in Sweden, I think it's 1.8 or 1.9. So without them, I think we have only 1.1. But I think with them, it's only 1.4. So, but it is only because they were not born by the local mother. So that I think there's a lot of resentment about they coming here, they use up all our resources. But I think if you look at long-termly, I think these are the people. It could be a potential source of the way how to slow down our aging problem. Now, for the death, I think you know that I think we have about 50,000 of death now, close to 50,000 of death each year. But without the migration, actually, the number of birth, the number of death will outnumber of the number of birth in 2004. I think if that is what I mean. It happened 10 years ago already. I think if we do not have the migration from China, so I think that's one thing that we failed to appreciate. I think these people, either through the one-way permit holder or the migration, it does help us to slow down the aging process. And also in Japan now, as you can see, last year, I think the number of deaths have already outnumbered of the number of births. So Japan now experiences what we call the depopulation situation. So, and also the in and out, I think, yes, that is something that we have to work on. We like to bring in more people here. And as a matter of fact, I think it would be good if the government can stop the people leaving. Right? I think there are some discussion about this third wave of migration now, right? I mean, since 1997, right? So now these are people, they just say that the things are expensive, the age is not very good, and then you can name it. I mean, these are a lot of so-called the pushing factors, to push the people out of Hong Kong. So you can see we have a much slower growth than before, I think. So actually there's some people, they said, oh, it's good for Hong Kong. When we had Hong Kong has already have a lot of people, which is true. Hong Kong has a lot of people and also have a lot of visitors too. But at the same time, we are not only talking about the quantity, we are also talking about the composition as well. I think if you have a slower growth, well, what it means that you will have a lot of elderly people, and then I think it will actually affect, I think, the whole community. So I think, so not only talk about the size, I think the quantity and the quality and the composition as well. So we are only talking about 0.4%, okay, of our growth. Now the aging, as you know now, by 2011 now we are aged about 43 years old now, I think. So every 2 years we age by 1 year. So it doesn't look very challenging. When you go to the KCR or MTR now, I think you just give way to the elderly. I think there's a lot of people around, they are very old. So, and actually it's the elderly, they have to fight for seats. So you have seen this before. I think this is what we're talking about. But now, one thing I still have to rectify some of the myth. They say that, well, by 2041, and then we're talking about 30% of the people that age 65 or above. But actually, this thing, it doesn't happen. Wait until 2041 to hit you. Right now, right here, we are experiencing the aging problem now. So I think when they say, don't think that this suddenly it come up by 2041. But now here, we are having an aging problem of 14%, over 1 million people already. Right? These are the challenges already. Okay, there's project figures with a slower, and also we talk about the household size. I think the household size has come down by 2.8, 2.7, and 2.7. So it's getting smaller and smaller, and now we see that it's 2.8, 2.7, and plus one dog or one cat. You know what I mean? So we have smaller people, but we have the dogs and cats. And this is the picture I took close to my home. The Westerner in Hong Kong, they have the children. I think the Chinese couple, they don't have children with 2 dogs. so when we do a study and then we show them the number of babies come down and then the number of pets goes up. But the life satisfaction is when you have kids, the pets or the children, they all increase the life satisfaction. But they have made a claim that pets is better than children. They don't complain. This is the picture I took when I went to a meeting. You want to make a guess of which country it is? So what I'm trying to say that this low fertility not only happened in Hong Kong, it happened in other places too. So this is make a guess. Where is it? Yes. Right? Korea. No, it was taken in a subway in Japan. So there's but actually Korea have a low fertility rate too. So I mean you have 1 and then 2 parents and 2 grandparents and now 3 dogs. So yeah, that is the situation. Okay. So what I like to see is the labor participation. We've been talking about this. Now, actually, what you can see because we have more people that stay in the university now. So they delayed, I think, the time they come to the workforce. But actually, for the men, age 30 or above, will work like dog. I mean, we have 96% of the women, the working participation rate. It's very high rate. But it's very interesting when you look at by 2011, actually the rate is that it has come down quite a bit. So you're not surprising you will see some of the friends that they take the early retirement or they, for some reason, I think the men's working participation has come down. But for the women, actually they have been working very, very hard already. You can see from the green line, this is 1991, and then go to 2001, and then you can do 2011. And so actually they are really contributing, I think, to the workforce. But now, I think Doris has put it very politically correct. It says that we want to give them choices. No, we are not trying to force the women to go to work. We would like to give them choices. if they like to go out to work, and also with good support, I mean, instead of a very long working hours, give them fractional appointment, and actually, hopefully, I think this group of people, they will have to offset, I think, some of the shortage. And when somebody say that, why in France, why the TFR, the total fertility rate is about 1.8, but the women working participation rate is 70%, but in Hong Kong it's only 50%. But it is actually because in that society, they believe this gender equality, they give a lot of options, the support, I think, for the women to go to work and give them choices, and also have this sort of infrastructure to do so. But now, I think in Hong Kong, when you ask the women, not because they do not want to work, they do want to work, but if you want to work for 12 hours or so, it is too much for them, because they still like to have time with the family or so. I think there's something that which the government, I think, can take the lead, I think, to deal with the situation. We look at the male changes and the female changes. Actually, what we like to see here, it is because of the expansion of the university education, and especially for females. I don't know what happened in CUHK, but in Hong Kong U, I think our first year in Jinteng, 54% they are female, only 45 males. I always say we are the boys, no? I mean, in our graduate school, I mean, 70% they are females and 30% are males, no? So we don't look good, no? We are shrinking, okay? But for the female, they're expanding, you know? They are expanding. I think that's what we see here. And also, you can see the service worker. So that is part of the reason why to explain why you have an increase of the workforce, because our industry has moved to more service sectors or financial sectors, and these two sectors might be, I think, the female, they will do better than us, okay? Okay, I'd like to this the article we wrote with the researcher from Oxford University. They talk about the women. I mean, they still come to work, but they still have to do a lot of work, right? The household chore, so which is totally unfair. And you better to educate this guy, you know, to be more family friendly. Okay. The other thing in Hong Kong, which is very unfortunate, is about our median income. I think when you see the 1981 and then to 2001, for that past decade, our salary has gone up by nearly 100%. But from 2001 to 2011, actually our salary has only gone up by 10%. So if you look at these figures, then you know why in the past decade or so, why the Hong Kong people, they're getting so frustrated. Because you can see the GDP is keep on growing, right? But our the benefit itself, it doesn't flow to the people. So even we are getting a bit frustrated too. This is, but actually we are the fortunate group already. So we are being well paid, well looked after by the university. But as you can see, the ordinary people, they really have a hard time, right? Okay. So fertility rate, you can see this, right? It all comes down. One thing I have to rebuke, I think some of the comments that the Singapore government, I think I like this. The Singapore is saying that, well, the Singapore, they do a lot and then has not shown the effect. But the Singapore got a 1.3 and 1.3, 1.2 something, the TFR. But in Hong Kong, we're talking about 1 or 1.1. So actually, you don't expect them to bring them back to 2.1, but at least, I think for those people who like to have baby, this support by the government, they make it have less barrier and then they have a less difficult time. So I say, please, whenever the people say that the Singapore experience is not successful, it's not quite true. They do have a higher TFR than Hong Kong, okay? So, and you can see this the proportion of the married women. I think now you can see and more people, I think 69% by that time you get married already. But 2011, it's only 27%. No. So that is a challenge. So actually, when you say about the fertility rate, there are 4 major causes: the marriage postponement, increase of the spinsterhood, and then the low order live birth, and also curtailment of the higher order live birth. These all are the important factors to explain or to contribute to a low birth rate in Hong Kong. Now, we like to say that it's coming down like this. You know, it's 1981 and then 86, 91. So what we like to see, it's not a temporal effect, it's a quantum. It's a quantum. If you do demography, you know what do I mean, right? And it's also the speed and the magnitude. It comes so fast and so quick, and then so I like to see that there's not tempo, quantum, right? And also, but now we have a bit of pick up by the birth from the old age group. This from 30 to 35. So now you can see there's a lot of pregnant ladies now, but they are not young, but they are older. But this is a catch-up. However, although the government is trying to say this, now, oh, it's good that, but these only contribute to 3,000 births. You know, but the major birth or the major age group who contribute the most birth it is at this age group. So we should work on that rather to depend on this group of people. Okay, although the rate is as high because the people at that risk group is small, so the effect itself it doesn't save you, right? So don't count on that. Count on this, okay, or count on you. This graph, you showed this before. I think USA is right here, and then we are right here. So there must be some subtle differences. Why in the US, in the Western country, they do enjoy to have that, and why we have this? You know? So I think there must be something there. You know? So there's something, it is a mindset change, the environment, and all this sort of thing, they are important. Okay, we like to show this graph. A lot of people, they are complaining there are not enough never married women in Hong Kong, right? Which is not true. When you compare with the same age group, looking at 2011, there's 10,000 in surplus, 90,000 in surplus, 12,000 down. What I mean is the number of the never married men subtract by the number of never female. So it's all positive. But the only problem is the women in Hong Kong or in other places, they always marriage up. They don't marriage down. You know what I mean? So the female always like to marry someone older. Or actually, it's the men like to marry someone younger. No? One way or the other. If you take the 3 years differences in the age, then you can see these are the discrepancies. So we have at least 60,000 never married women in surplus. I shouldn't say in surplus. I say something like that. So it is the differences. So you will have to, and plus every year, you know what happened? We have the cross-border marriage. We are losing 20,000 marriageable men. You know, some men that are not marriageable. And then we have 6,000 cross-border marriage between the Hong Kong women and mainland men, but there are 20,000 is Hong Kong men and mainland women. So every year we are losing our blood, and plus we have so many wonderful students from mainland China. So our local student feels very threatened, you know, by all these competitors. You know. Anyway, the divorce rate goes up to, I mean, that is one of the problems in Hong Kong. The divorce rate goes up, and it has gone up by nearly 8 times. I think in 1981, we have only 2,000 divorce cases. By 2012, I think there are 20,000. So it's gone up, right? But the good thing in Hong Kong, one thing we like to say, they have not given up the marriage yet. What we have found out that in the 80s, I think the remarriage rate is only account for less than 10% of all registered marriage. But by 2012, it accounts for 1/3. So what it means that they divorce, but they're going back to the marriage market. They're going back to the marriage market. But because of the divorce itself, it reduces the chance to have babies. Right? The propensity to have baby will be smaller. But now, but it's get to another bigger problem when you have remarriage and okay. Life expectancy. Now, I like to show the demographic window. I can tell you when we involved in this population policy, which is long time ago. We worked on this in the year of 2000, when Mr. Dong was still the first chief executive. Then he asked Mr. Zhang, when he was the chief secretary, to do this population policy. But of course, he didn't do anything for the past 10 years. You know? So, but then at that time when we talk about this, because they do see there is a problem, because the dependency ratio is coming down, because they did not see the need yet, because we have a substantial reduction of the younger dependency. And then the aging population, this post-50, post-60, have not gone to the retirement age yet. So they see there's a lot of saving here, right, when you look at the dependency rate. But when we have been talking about for 10 years, but by the new government coming in, then now they see the thing, but now we are at the right rock bottom. The important thing is, how do we do this? Because now when it goes up, it's going very fast, and it's just no turning back. It's a one-way traffic. So I think they said, oh, it is too late, which is, yes, it is too late, but it's better than never. So I think at least we still have to do something, okay? All right, so the challenges, we maintain a population of high quality are always very important. Quantity, it doesn't matter, we want quality. Whether it's visitor or anybody, we like high quality because our constraint in our capacity, okay? So we like sustainable, we like the education and skill training. I always say that any money to spend on our children today is a good investment. I think that's what we're trying to tell the financial secretary, which he did not agree. So they still think that we spend too much money. But it is the only way how we keep it sustainable. And also the physical and the mental well-being and family-friendly working environment is very important. I think it is these, the quality make Hong Kong to sustain, to strive, and then to excel. And then I always say that this don't count on the government to help you to look after yourself, because I think when you're getting older and then you are disease burdened, you have a higher chance of disability. And I always say stand behind the yellow line. Okay, so you stay there, right? When you go to the station, stand behind the yellow line. And aging, I think we talk about aging and how do we think out of the box. I think each time when the policy, the population policy, the policy address, they tell you how many beds they're going to give us, but think differently. Because the aging goes up and then they are living longer but not necessarily healthier, so there's a double hit. So we should think how to change the mode of the care. Like how the aging in residency, when I was in Japan and I saw these people, they convert this domestic household to become the daily caring center within the district, and how to make use of the resources locally, and then to perform this simple dressing, medication for those elderly who live nearby instead of going to the hospital. I think that's something that we have to think about. So aging in place, I think what we have been talking about, and then money for the patients, 錢跟人走, that's another things that what we have to be talking about. And then empowerment of the human capital is very important. I think in Hong Kong we have been talking about, we have too many qualifications. You might have 3 masters and 2 something, and then you're still sitting here. But we are talking about the skills. The skill, we do not have enough skills. The skills are very important. I hate to see our young people, just to sell the iPhone. I would much rather than the young people, they know how to make the kimchi noodles, something good. There's a skill set that they can sell. The migration, we need migration. I think we need we also believe that I think what we can do, the development is not only talk about the growth, we also the capacity building as well. I like to show you this graph. Why is that? Because a lot of people complain about the one-way permit holder. But what we like to show in our paper in 2002, it showed that without the migration, that is our population, that what it would look like. So you can see that would even more unsustainable. So I think sometimes we just take it for granted for whatever we are having. Okay, so family friendly is not only individual choice. A lot of people say that when you like to have a baby, but now it's a community response. We need to community response. I think the babies not only belong to me, it belongs to the community as well. So I think the government should think about some measure to help them. So at the end, I'd like to show this. You know how to finish it off? What is this? 杯水車薪. That means the fire is there when you give the water, and it doesn't put out the fire, right? So it doesn't help. So we think out of the box, community involvement, very important. And then I also hope changes. And then we are not asking for revolution, but we do need to evolution, okay? And then to end up the crop analogy, the politics, like the second arm, it moves very fast, but it doesn't change much. For a good economic policy, it's like the middle arm, it does change, it does make a difference. But for a population policy, it's like the early arm, it moves very slowly. But when you wake up, and then if you don't get it right, you miss the boat and then you miss the plane. Then you'll be left behind, you miss all the opportunity. Thank you.